We'll talk some NFL and get you ready for an NFL Sunday. What's up with the clock? What's up with the clock situation? I thought we all voted for this to go away. I don't really care either way. I've had this conversation before with Annie and Craig on the Annie and Elston show. But that being said, I don't understand I don't understand how we voted for this and now it's just not. I know the federal government's got to approve it and all this other stuff. But how many more times are we going to continue to fall back like we did last night? Good NFL Sunday slate for us today. We'll get into that in just a little bit. We're going to talk some college football. I watched a decent amount of college football yesterday in the nightcap, and there's a lot of just from what I've observed in college football and what I've observed at the high school level, I got some interesting topics to discuss when it comes to the level of play and the product on the field in college, in high school, and probably pro, but the pro is a little bit different with this kind of new era of sports. And I find it very interesting, from like the way fans react to the way the players play to and the product on the field, the way guys coach. It's just a little bit different now, and I wonder how much of that has to do with how much money that is involved with sports nowadays, from youth all the way through. And we'll talk about that in the 9 o'clock hour. But like we always kind of want to do here on 97.3 The Fan, we want to talk Padres baseball. We are the flagship of the Padres. It's hard to talk Padres baseball when the season just ended. The official season of Major League Baseball just ended this past week with the Dodgers winning the World Series, which obviously discussed a lot of people here in San Diego. But before we start diving into a lot of the off-season tasks the Padres have to do, mixed in with, important dates and everything that we kind of really talked about on Friday on Annie and Elston, I think you have to start looking at the overall evaluation of the San Diego Padres. And I'm not going to go position by position, but one of the questions that we haven't gotten to on the show during the midweek that we will probably get to this week, and you could get to it at any point in time during the offseason, but was the 2024 season a success? And how I view this and how I view, evaluating successful seasons, I think a lot of it has to do with expectations, but I don't think you can evaluate the Padres season and compare it to like your rival seasons. Like just because the Padres lost to the Dodgers, who ended up winning the World Series, and the Padres probably had the best chance of knocking out the Dodgers in the postseason, just because they failed to do that and they failed to score in 24 consecutive innings does not make the overall season a failure. I think you have to look at the beginning of the season, again, for the full evaluation and be like, what were the expectations of the 2024 Padres? Before they jumped on a flight to South Korea at the end of spring training when they broke camp, the way the roster was assembled, the way the offseason went and trading away Juan Soto to bring back some pieces, the way that they went with a rookie center fielder who had never played center field at the major league level, who was a shortstop going up through minor league baseball, having him start in center field by taking a waiver on a player that has always had success with you, but it was coming off one of his worst seasons in his career in Colorado with Jurickson Profar, and starting him in left field, having him replace Juan Soto, who is arguably one of the best players in Major League Baseball, is going to get a big contract this year, with assembling the pitching staff that was banged up and aging a little bit, with giving Michael King an opportunity to start, who had never done that for an entire season with the New York Yankees. I think with all of those kind of question marks and a lot of those things working out, I think you have to say that the season was a success. I think you have to say what the Padres were able to do and what A.J. Preller was able to do in assembling a roster. And we have criticized A.J. enough when it deserves to be criticized, and I think you have to praise him when he deserves to be praised. And right now, what he had done with the 2024 team deserves a lot of credit. They had to cut the payroll. They wanted to reset the luxury tax. They did that. And they still were able to put together a competitive ball club and a really good ball club that, by the way, had the second most wins in a single season in Padres history with 93. I think the World Series is obviously the main goal for everybody every year. But if you thought at the beginning of the season that that team, as assembled, was going to win the World Series, and like, this is it, World Series or bust, I'm telling you, man, you're drinking the wrong Kool-Aid. I mean, there's no way that you thought the team coming out of spring training was a World Series caliber team. You know what? I want to be on the level of positivity and hopium that you are on, because that team coming out of spring training with all the question marks they had no business winning a World Series. In fact, I thought it was going to be a situation where it would be tight for them to even make the playoffs. You were relying on players to do things that they hadn't done in their careers yet. You were relying on players to have career-type years, and that ended up happening. So for that perspective of just overall expectations and thinking about it from a perspective of realistic expectations, every fan's expectations going into the season is like, we're going to win a World Series. I realistically looked at that club, even with Dylan Cease, and was like, this team can make the playoffs, but this is not like a World Series caliber team as assembled at the beginning of the year. Now, it was before they traded for Luis Ariz and a couple other things that they put together, and I thought they did a great job with that. But based on the expectations, I would consider this season a success. Was the postseason a success? No, it's only a success for one team. But overall season, I would consider it a success. You can't evaluate your ball club against other ball clubs. You have to focus on yourself. And for a team that didn't make the playoffs in 2023, that traded away a young superstar, that cut payroll, that went underneath the luxury tax, for them to go out there and win a playoff series in the wild card against the Braves, even though I know the Braves were banged up, but to overall make the playoffs, give the Dodgers a run for their money for the division, and then be able to win a playoff series and then go toe-to-toe with L.A. in the divisional series, I think it's a success. But at the same time, I'm not saying you hang a banner for it, because ultimately what you want to do is you want to win a World Series. I think it's another stepping stone. I think you could have some success in there without talking about it being a catastrophic failure. I don't think it's a catastrophic failure. To me, a failure of a season would have been they not making the playoffs and then this thing really fully collapsing. I mean, I know LA beat the Padres in the divisional series and the 24 straight playoff innings of shutout and ended up winning the World Series, and they continue to be positioned to be good for a long time. But I got news for you. That's just how Major League Baseball has created their sport. Unlike the National Football League and maybe the NBA and the NHL, Major League Baseball is run by a couple of teams, but won't have it be a level playing field when it comes to spending money. And there's both sides of that spectrum you can share blame. It's the players, because they see salary cap, they go, I'm going to get hosed and not get all this money that I think I deserve. So the players are selfish in that aspect. And the owners are selfish, especially the big ones, on the aspect of, really making the rules in order to benefit the big market teams. Every other league's got some sort of salary cap or caps on contracts like the NBA, right, with their max and super max, and, years are limited. Baseball's just like, spend as much money as you want. We'll put in this luxury tax that only really hurts the lower level team. It only really hampers the lower level teams from trying to spend with the big boys, because, again, the Mets, the Yankees, and the Dodgers have so much money that they can spend and pay for 2 full rosters, with one of them being their actual payroll and the other one being their penalties and the luxury tax, and just go like, it doesn't matter. We're making so much money anyway. The National Football League is different. In the NFL, their greed, and everybody's got their own greed, right? I mean, every league has their own greed of who's making the money. In Major League Baseball, the players, the top players are making money, and the top teams are making money, and then everybody else is just kind of fighting for everything else. And the National Football League, it's the owners versus the players. So I'm not saying that's necessarily right either, but what the NFL does do is they make it a level playing field where any team can win any year. Look at the Washington Commanders. Washington Commanders are 6-2 right now. Now, they haven't played a lot of good teams, but they were awful the last couple of years. I mean, they flip it and they're 6-2. You start looking at some of the standings in the National Football League, and it's you never know what it's going to be every year. In order for the Chiefs to win and continue to put out a big roster, guys have to take pay cuts. Major League Baseball would never do that. The players would never do that. And it's come to a point where like they make so much money that it's okay if like a team just gets stacked. I mean, in Major League Baseball, you get the Tom Brady effect a lot. The Dodgers are so set up for success because they have a player in Shohei Ohtani that makes more money than God. He's got the most money. I mean, for any baseball, for any athlete. He's like one of the highest paid athletes in the world, and most of it comes from endorsements. That guy can take a pay cut to make his entire team loaded by signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's ridiculous. And Major League Baseball allowing that to happen because they're looking at the dollar figures of best player on biggest market team makes the product brutal. And this is where it's going to start getting even weird. I wouldn't even say weird. And you know what? I'm almost rooting for it just to show how dumb the setup is for Major League Baseball. And it is dumb from a competitive balance standpoint. The Dodgers, and again, this is from take it from what it's worth, right? It's from John Heyman. It's from, Bob Nightingale. It's from some of the guys that kind of, they're definitely fed a lot of information from agents that want to get bigger contracts with their players. But they've been saying the Los Angeles Dodgers are going to be in on the best free agents every year for the next 9 years because of Shohei Ohtani's contract. I hope they sign Juan Soto because it would just show how dumb Major League Baseball is with their super teams that they want. And the thing is everything happens when it comes to greed and it comes to those 7 deadly sins. It's like clockwork. It kills whatever it is a part of. And so if this offseason goes the way it could potentially go, where you have a team like the Dodgers, and it doesn't have to be the Dodgers. I know I keep saying the Dodgers because it's here. They just won the World Series, and they got a ridiculous contract for Shohei Ohtani. If you think that, just wait for this to happen. But if the Dodgers happen to sign Juan Soto, and they go out and they sign Blake Snell, and they just load up on this team that they already put together because they can pay the money, right? How many people around Major League Baseball and other markets are going to watch? I am convinced that Major League Baseball thinks you as a fan in San Diego really only go to games because you want to watch the Dodgers, Yankees, and traditional teams come to play. I think they think that. I think they think that big time. I think that's why they were licking their chops at this World Series matchup. Like, everybody's going to love this. Major League Baseball has it set up like it's the Globetrotters against the Washington Generals, but the only difference is there's about 5 or 6 Globetrotter teams in Major League Baseball with high payrolls that they want players to play for, and then everybody else has their own Generals team that can all show up when those teams come around on their traveling circus. It's an awful setup. It's not about like making it competitive. National Football League has their problems. Their players don't get paid what they probably should get paid for what they're doing to their bodies in comparison to the NBA and Major League Baseball. But it's competitive. It's the most competitive league in the United States. There's hardly ever a dominant team, and usually those dominant teams, guys are taking pay cuts. They're taking pay cuts to make their team better. And you have that competitive grit and contract. Here's the other thing, too, about the NFL over Major League Baseball. Say what you want about it, but again, it's people don't like to hear this. With the contracts not being fully guaranteed, you got to play for something all the time. These guys are playing for their livelihood every single day. Is that fair? No. It's probably not fair. But does it make it for the highest level of entertainment? It does. And again, this is an entertainment business. So very interested to see how this offseason plays out. But when you start looking at it and kind of the whole point of that conversation that I just had, or that whole message, is you cannot compare the Padres' success to a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, who is at just a different level with everything that they can do. It's not the same. I'm curious to see what the Padres are going to do this offseason, mostly on how much money they're going to spend. They reset the luxury tax, which is great. Now they don't have to pay in taxes. They got to pay the 20% or whatever it is if they go over $241 million in their payroll, which they're probably going to have to do. But if that's the case, if they're going to go over the luxury tax, or they're going to spend the money, if they reset it to go over, Padres can make a lot of moves this offseason. If they're trying to stay underneath the luxury tax again, you got to start shredding some payroll. So I think it's interesting to see. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in this offseason. And the biggest thing is you can't really start putting together what you think the Padres are going to do until you kind of guess what they're going to do with their money, because what they need and what they can do are two totally different things. And we're going to talk more about that when we come back. Want to get your phone calls, going to get you involved with the show today, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I'm Braden Surprenant. You can follow me on social media at @B_SURP, at BSurp. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, as well as TikTok. Want you involved with the show. What do you think the Padres need to do this offseason? Who do you think they should go get? Give us a call, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We roll on talking more Padres offseason information, plus some Padres that opted out of contracts. We'll let you know who those players are and whether or not we think they can remain Padres when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show. Live and local each every Sunday morning, San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Sunday morning, Braden Surprenant show live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3. The Fan, talking Padres baseball with you. We'll talk some Aztecs football in just a little bit and some college football as well. Get you ready for the NFL today. Coming up in about an hour and 30 minutes, we got NFL football kicking off throughout the country. Not here in San Diego, but around the country, to say the least. Talked a lot about Padres and where they're at, and was the season a success? I think it was. Some people in the chat disagree just because they lost to the Dodgers. I think it's a little bit different. I don't think you can compare yourself to other teams. You got to focus on yourself. And from this perspective, I think they did have a successful season. They played to or over expectations when it came to what it was at the beginning of the year at spring training. I think a lot of fans, including myself, get ahead of ourselves at different points in the year when they go on runs and everything like that, going, you know what, we can I think this team can win the World Series. Just because we think they can win doesn't mean they will. And baseball is weird anyway. I think, you could be like, hey, look, we gave the Dodgers a run for their money, but at the same time, like I don't need to be hanging the banner that the Padres almost beat the Dodgers in the playoffs, even though the Padres are the biggest threat. I mean, hang the banner. You got to win. You got to win a World Series. So, in order to win a World Series, they're going to have to again go back to the drawing board this offseason. Got some dates coming up. Free agency officially starts on Monday. It starts on Monday. That is the first day that free agents can sign with teams. Monday. I'm pretty sure it is at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock? Yes. 2 o'clock Pacific time is at the time where players can start signing. You will see you'll see a couple of moves this week. Stove will get hot a little bit. And then after this week, it will kind of die down a little bit until you get to general manager meetings and then, again, winter meetings, where you'll get a little bit of a spike again, and then it'll kind of die down a little bit near the holidays. Padres have made a couple of moves during the holidays, but really not a lot. And then into January, it gets into the real dead zone, and then a little bit of a ramp up again right before spring training. So that's kind of what it's been. I've heard the idea, and I kind of like the idea of Major League Baseball having like a 1 month window where you have the signed free agents, and then it gets cut off for a time being until spring training opens up. I think that would be fun for Major League Baseball. Get guys signed fast like the NBA does over the offseason. I mean, the NBA offseason is more fun than the actual season, it seems like, more times than not. But you start looking at some of the free agents the Padres will have. Here's the ones that are listed on MLB.com. It says notable free agents. Nick Ahmed's number one on the list, but take that for what it's worth. Nick Ahmed, Elias Diaz, Kyle Higashioka, Hassan Kim, David Peralta, Martin Perez, Jurickson Profar, Tanner Scott, Donovan Solano. Out of that entire list, there is only one player that I would want on a long-term contract, and that is Tanner Scott. And my reasoning on that is Tanner Scott had just shown in the postseason as a left-handed reliever who's one of the best left-handed relievers in Major League Baseball that he can stymie Shohei Ohtani, who is not only the best player in baseball, but he is the best player on the team that you are currently competing against for a division every single year. Sometimes you have to build your team up to take down the teams in your own division to try to get to that spot anyway. I mean, you're going to have to go through the Dodgers. You're going to have to play them more than any other team in Major League Baseball aside from the other three division teams in the National League West. Why not have the asset on your team that knows how to get them out or has gotten them out when you need to get them out in crunch time? To me, that is valuable enough to give him a bigger contract. And then I would trade Robert Suarez. Maybe you could keep Robert Suarez. He's got an opt-out at the end of the year of 2025. So he can opt out. If he has another good season, he opts out. And then if you didn't sign Tanner Scott, now you got to go find a closer after next season. Out of that list, that's who I would sign. I mean, Jurickson Profar, I mean, we've seen some of the rumors of like what he might be able to get. To me, unless he's making like, less than $7 million or less, and I think $7 million is pushing it, I think you got to let him walk. I think the same thing with Hassan Kim. Kim opted out. He's going to get paid. You're already paying him $2 million to go away, and he's going to get a lot more money than $6 million. And if you pay him $6 million, then you're paying him the $8 million that you're going to have to pay him anyway. But he's going to get more than that. And to me, when you're in a position like the Padres are, where again you have kind of limited resources when it comes to money because you've already spent this is a projected estimated payroll as of right now with the roster constructed with arbitration eligible players and players on the 40-man roster in the future. According to Fangraphs, you're already at $212 million. You can go over the luxury tax up until about $260 million before you get the next threshold and really pay a 20% tax, and you're not paying a lot of money in taxes. You could go through that. You could be in that kind of frame of mind, but that adds up very quickly. And if you are trying to not go over multiple luxury tax thresholds, you cannot afford to pay Hassan Kim more than $10 million next year if he's going to miss a significant amount of time in that season anyway. Same thing is said about Jurickson Profar. You cannot, if you are playing with that kind of budget, you cannot pay Jurickson Profar $7 million or more and just hope that the good times roll with the guy that has played very well in San Diego. In fact, the best in his career has been here in San Diego. I think that's more of an incentive for him to try to make things work here in San Diego than it is for the Padres to go get Jurickson Profar. Because if somebody offers Profar more than $7 million and he comes back and goes, hey, look, you can have me for around this, I'd be like, good luck. And I loved having Jurickson Profar on the team. I think you also have to consider, and here's the thing with fans too. Here's the thing with fans. And I'm a fan, right? Fan of the ball club, born and raised San Diegan, love the Pods. You cannot have that mentality of like, let's run it back because you love the players that were on your team. Thanks for the memories. We appreciate your service. Go do great things somewhere else. We got to go find some replacements that fit our team and our budget and everything like that. That's going to make us better because again, this roster lost in the divisional series. And if you continue to roll out the same roster over and over and over again, expecting a different result, that is the definition of insanity. Because even though this Padres roster was solid, and it was probably the most well-rounded roster that you could have, it still had some major holes that needed to be fixed, that still need to be fixed, that if you spend the money on Kim and Profar at the level they might be getting in the free agency, you're not going to be able to fix said problems, and you're losing guys off the roster. You have to make decisions on some players. You know, Michael King's a free agent next year. Tyler Wade's a free agent next year too, but that's not really a huge decision. Dylan Cease is a free agent next year. Luis Arise is a free agent next year. I mean, these are some of the players that you're going to have to make decisions on in the next couple of years. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We're going to talk some more Padres baseball. We're going to dive into some Aztecs football as well. Be sure to give us a call. Also chime in on the chat. We'll take your phone calls when we come back on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each every Sunday morning. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show. I do so many shows now. Welcome back to the Jenny Craig Pavilion, where USD plays LMU in women's college volleyball. That was me yesterday. Welcome back to America's finest football show, which you can hear on Monday nights. I'll be reacting to the playoffs for high school football playoffs seedings today. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they come out today at 1 o'clock. CIF San Diego announcing the playoff pairings for football today. First round of the playoffs will be on Friday of this week. After that, we will have the quarterfinals for most divisions and the semifinals for the open division, as all open division teams will have a bye. And then after that, we'll have the semifinals on the Friday following, on the 22nd of November for every division, and we will have the CIF Open Division Championship on Saturday, November 23rd. And then the following week will be all the other CIF championship games, as the Open Division champion will have another bye, and then we will get into state playoff information. I've already had multiple people DM me about seating info and everything like that. As it stands right now on calpreps.com for the high school football fans out there, a lot of movement around. But if you go to calpreps.com for the high school football fans out there, and you go to national/state power rankings, scroll down to the San Diego section and click section, that is going to be the system used to determine who is in the playoffs and who is not. And what they're going to do is they're going to go from 1 to, and I'm pretty sure there's like 87 teams. Yeah, 87 teams in San Diego. They're going to go they're going to rank them 1 through 87, which they are currently have. Top 4, that's your open. And then when you go 5 through 16, then your next 12, obviously on the list, is D1. And then your next level on there, 17 through 17 through 29 would be your D2, and then so on and so forth through 5 divisions. And then when you're looking at team number 64, 65-ish, you're looking at a team that is on the outside looking in the playoffs. There will be about 17 teams, 15 to 16, 17 teams that don't make the playoffs in high school football. But answering a lot of coaches' questions today about the rating system. I don't have all the answers. I didn't create the rating system. Ned Freeman did. If you're interested in that, go to calpreps.com. You can check it out and see where everybody stands right now. Again, they will not announce until later on this afternoon. I think it's 1 o'clock. They got to get it out by. But CIF is not meeting until 9 a.m. So they're going to be they're going to be meeting in about 15 minutes in the CIF office with the seating committee. They got to go through a couple other things too, not just the CalPreps rating system. They got to talk about head-to-head matchups, because if two teams are head-to-head, the team that or if two teams are 1 and 2 or right next to each other in the ratings, if the team below the team above them beat the team above them, then they would flip-flop those said teams in the divisions, and then also every league champion gets to go to the playoffs. So if there's any league champion that has a rating on the outside looking in, they get bumped in for the last team in Division 5. That's how that would work. A couple other logistical things that need to happen when it comes to seeding that the oversight committee will do. And then after that, we will have our matchups coming up later on at 1 o'clock, and I will have a full breakdown of all of that tomorrow night on America's Finest Football Show. It's a high school football show. We do talk college baseball as well. And we will have all that breakdown. We'll be breaking down why teams didn't make the open, why teams are in this spot, kind of preview what the playoffs are going to be like. It's going to be a fun show. Cannot wait to get that show on the road tomorrow. But we will be on Monday throughout the playoffs, throughout the state playoffs, talking high school football with all of you. That's my other show that I do aside from Annie and Nelson from 10 to 2 each and every day on The Fan, mixed with this Sunday show. And again, all the play-by-play for the University of San Diego. We got college basketball starting this week. Aztecs and UCSD get underway for the Aztecs home opener. USD will play on Wednesday on a doubleheader with their men's and women's basketball programs, but it's basketball season already. for college basketball, which means high school is coming up very close. Want to get to your phone calls, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Let's head on down to Chula Vista where Kevin's waiting by. Kevin, what's going on? What do you got on your mind today? Did you enjoy your extra hour of sleep, Kevin?
Yeah, not a bad thing for some of us who are just 2 years older than you, but
That's
nonetheless.
Right.
Hey, good to hear you, Braden. And a couple things. First of all, old business, I just wanted to thank you again for your clear-headedness and clairvoyance on this debacle that they call the six Pac-12 or Pac whatever it is. It's incredible how San Diego State seems to continue to step in piles of muck here, and I still trying to figure out how this is. It's a lateral move at best, and without certainty of television, which there isn't, I don't know how they're going to attract teams from other conferences, and what is left out there to attract, frankly, is not appointment television. So we'll leave that over on the side for a second. Over to Jurickson. So as of today, I'm seeing his latest stat is a lifetime 245 hitter. He is heading into his, early mid-30s at this point?
Yeah, he's very early 30s.
Yeah. So my offer to him would be 3 years, $5 million apiece, backload with incentives, another $2 million per year in incentives. That gets him, if he performs really well, in 3 years he comes out with $21 million. That's not bad, considering his status, career, statistics. I think that's acceptable. I think it's fair. I think your comments about you can't continue to think you're going to run this thing back, you're absolutely right. I think the challenge for AJ at this point is you got to ask one question: can they do better? And if they can do better than what they've got, then you've got to go after it and see what you can get. But I think three years at $5 million, backload with incentives, gets them to 21. What do you think?
I think that's a fair deal, Kevin. I just, in this day and age of players and I mean, everything's money driven, right? I mean, it's not really, and I honestly, and this is interesting because I think you're seeing this at the college level right now and I see it at the high school level. I just think for a lot of different factors that winning is not the number one priority for a lot of athletes. Does it need to be the number one priority for athletes? That could be a different topic for a different day. But, just even at the high school level, I mean, there's a lot of kids, and, my dad's been saying I totally agree, and I see it with my teams. I see it with other teams. I see a major problem. It's just a lot of kids now will take the win, but they don't necessarily want the win. And I think that has a lot to do with just kind of the nature of what we've created sports to be at the same time. But then you start working up the ladder, and it's like there's guys who are making so much money playing a child's game. It's very interesting to see. It's the competitiveness that is kind of fallen off a little bit. So I think that's a fair deal. I think if Jurickson Profar wants to stay in San Diego, he would take said deal. But to me, I think some team might be, I don't want to use the term dumb enough, but they might be dumb enough to offer him more, and I think is going to end up. But I think in terms of giving your best effort to try to keep Jurickson Profar and make it make sense for your ball club and trying to win here in San Diego, I think that's a very good deal for both parties in that particular case, especially with incentives to incentivize the guy to go out there and earn his money. But then again, you get to this point, and so a lot of these athletes just want their money up front and don't want to worry about incentives and think like last season was just the year that they earned their big money contract. But if you look at it, his year last year, being a career year, is more of an outlier than it is a regular occurrence if you look at his overall stats. And I appreciate the phone call, Kevin. I think he's reorganizing his garage over there or something. I don't know what's going on back there. The boogeyman got him, or Jurickson Profar got him saying, I'm not taking that deal. Jurickson Profar as a Padre has been great. I've loved watching Jurickson Profar play with the Padres. He has been on the Padres every year since 2020, even though he had spent a little bit of time in Colorado in 2023. He was on the Padres in 2023 because the Padres picked him up off waivers. I think he's a great vibes guy, and I thought he played his ass off this year, and it would be great to have him do that again in 2025. But the thing is, it's like you start looking. I mean, he, for a long time, was being considered a bust for being the number one prospect in Major League Baseball. He's finally hit it at age 31. I think the environment's great for him, but you can't overpay from. You can't use your emotions on this. You got to think clearly. This was the best statistical year that Jurickson Profar has had in any year in his career. The only one that comes close was 2020 in the shortened season with the Padres. This is the second season he has had a WAR that is north of 1. He is a good player, but he is not a guy that you give a ton of money to. So I don't see that. You can't pay him a lot of money. I agree with Kevin. I think it has to be an incentivized contract if you really want my opinion on that. And I would love to have Jurickson Profar back in the team. But if you go and if the Padres come back on this week and go, Padres have signed Jurickson Profar to a 3-year deal worth $30 million, and be like, why? Padres don't have the resources to do that when it comes to trying to stay underneath their, trying to not go super high over the luxury tax. And I think the same thing is with Ha-Seong Kim. I mean, what Ha-Seong Kim's going to get on the market is not worth it for the San Diego Padres and what he brings to the San Diego Padres. It's the same thing. I said the same thing last year with Gary Sanchez. People wanted to execute me. They got their pitchforks out. It's like, what do you mean? Gary Sanchez is great. Look how great he was for us. You can't give Gary Sanchez $10 million. He did okay with Milwaukee. Sometimes guys play hot at the end of the season. Sometimes guys have a really good year. But you can't reward a player for just one great year. I mean, that is just, it's kind of foolish. And you especially can't do it if the guy's 31 years old. Father Time is undefeated. Father Time is never going to lose. Profar might have a couple of great years here in the next couple of years, but the risk reward isn't there to re-sign him for what another team might desperately pay him. What you can afford to pay Jurickson Profar for the value he brings your team as it fits on your team is going to be different team to team. And there might be teams that can spend an extra $2 million on Jurickson Profar than the Padres can because they need him to do XYZ, or they don't need him to do XYZ. He could just be a bench piece, and they got all this money they can pay to be a bench piece or a spots player. I mean, the days of him being we didn't even know if he was going to be an everyday starter throughout the entire year. The guy got off to such a hot start, you had to play him every single day. These are the kind of conversations that you have to have. These are the conversations that you have to, discuss about evaluating, and valuing players when it comes to what you're willing to offer them on a contract. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for tuning in to the Braden Surprenant Show each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. Talking Padres baseball with you. We're going to dive into some Aztecs football when we come back. We will also talk about the college football slate, and I'll talk more about that kind of like the product on the field in college football right now. I think from a team by team perspective, you could say that it's anybody's game in college football. I think it's wide open in college football right now. And I think that's fun to watch. The difference is, though, I think the product on the field is trending backwards. I think that the product on the field is regressing a little bit, and especially in the form of what are players doing with certain just like not understanding situational awareness, not having any situational awareness, but also It's just this NIL level of play where guys are getting fully guaranteed contracts at the beginning of the year. It's kind of watering. It's not making the product on the field as great as it should be. We'll talk more about that when we come back. Get your phone calls. Braden Surprenant Show, Hour 2 rolling on. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. What's up, San Diego? Hour 2 of the Braden Surprenant Show. No, it's not 10 o'clock. No, the NFL is not on yet. Fix your clocks. We fell back last night. Fall back. in the fall, spring forward in the springtime, daylight savings time. So now, when you wake up, it won't be dark outside. It will be light again, but at 5 o'clock, it will be dark. What is the official, when's the sunset today? On the good old weather app. Taking a look here. Sun will set at 4:55. That's not fun. It will continue to get dark until December 21st, and then it will start getting light. There's your scientific lesson for the day. But hopefully you enjoyed your extra hour of sleep. And it is only 9:01 here in the AM on a Sunday morning. A little bit chillier of a morning, and it's starting to get a little cool. It rained last night. I was surprised. I was going to bed, went to bed early. I was angry at the TCU Horned Frogs for just being the completely poorly coached. It's bad. It's not good. I should start I don't have enough time. You know what? I don't have enough time to start my own other podcasts for different markets, for different things, but a TCU podcast hosted by me would be legendary stuff of what I watched in the Baylor game yesterday. Two very mediocre ball clubs playing football last night. But I went to bed, and I'm like, it was like the roaring noise outside. Now, I look at my window, I'm like, it's raining? It's pouring outside. It rained last night. Rough. You know, Andres, it's going to be dark at 3 a.m. every single time regardless. So you will be waking up in the dark. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. I'm Braden Surprenant. It's the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. I have a high school football show on Monday nights from 10 to midnight. We will be talking about the high school football playoffs starting up on Friday. They seed it today. In fact, CIF is now meeting. They're meeting at the CIF office out in East County at 9 in the morning. Actually, more in the college area. And they will be fitting the brackets together based on the CalPreps ratings that came out and updated last night. We'll see where everybody is playing. I know a lot of, some schools will be upset about the new rating system. I think it's great, personally. Everybody gets ranked and rated in the United States. And that rating system ends up predicting games. They have an 87% accuracy rate in picking the winner in said games. That rating system is the one being used to determine the playoffs in San Diego. So a lot of people complaining about, let's go back to the divisions because these small schools are getting hosed. Then you start realizing a lot of the small schools are actually big schools. Small schools on the program side, but 2,500 kids in their building. It would be even worse if they had the division still. But I digress, and that'll be a topic for tomorrow. We're talking Padres baseball. Do you want to get your phone calls today? 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. We're also talking to some San Diego State Aztec football from Friday. Talk some college football, and then we'll dive into NFL. We got a big Week 9 coming up in a matter of 56 minutes, as well as an injury update coming up for you in our next segment. We want to get back to the phone calls, though, because I think a lot of people still want to talk Padres baseball. Let's go up to Vista, where Juan's standing by. Juan, what's going on?
How's it going, Braden? Happy Sunday. I just wanted to talk about something that you said on Annie and Alston about how we could potentially either trade or get rid of Robert Suarez and keep Tanner Scott because he has a $10 million contract. I don't know the specifics off the top of my head, but if we were to trade Robert Suarez, what do you think we could get for him? And also, how much do you think we would have to pay Tanner Scott to keep him in San Diego?
Well, it depends on, obviously, the market. And it's interesting, on some of these projections, the Tanner Scott market is not as high as initially anticipated. But I would think you'd probably have to pay something around in between Robert Suarez contract, which he is currently on a 5-year, $46 million contract, and he can opt out after 2025. But yes, he is making $10 million next year, and then $8 million and $8 million. Since he is a closer, Tanner Scott, he probably will be making a little bit more than that. I don't know if he's up to Josh Hader and Edwin Diaz level. I'm sure it's pretty close. I don't know why he wouldn't, just because of where you're at with how he did against Shohei Ohtani and being a left-hander, and he kind of performed at that particular level. So I would say something around those contracts, but it looks like he was getting projected a little bit lower. And Josh Hader, was signing for like $19-20 million. I think that might be worth the price of admission for a guy like him to shut down Ohtani. So I'm thinking around $15 million. You're probably going to have to add $5 million to your payroll. But to me, in order for you to sign Tanner Scott, I think you would potentially have to trade Robert Suarez, I think, to make the money work. That's why I threw that idea out there. And to me, it's worth that because Robert Suarez can opt out at the end of the year. In terms of what you could get for Robert Suarez, you could probably get a decent couple of prospects that you might be able to either flip for other players or, kind of rebuild your farm system again, which we've seen A.J. Preller do a lot over the last couple of years. So I know it's kind of a vague answer. You kind of have to see how the market plays out and everything like that. But that is kind of my general thinking on trying to bring Tanner Scott back out of the group of free agents that the Padres currently have. If I had to pick one, that would be the guy to me that I would try to bring back regardless of price. And then I would try to make things work by potentially trading a Robert Suarez.
Yeah, I agree. I think Tanner Scott's a little too valuable for us to let him go, but obviously we're not A.J. Preller, but
yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, there's a lot more details that go into it. So we'll see what happens. I don't have this caller. I'm a one-man show right now. I don't have this caller screen. There's only one caller on hold. So if you are that caller, good morning. How are you? What's going on?
Are you talking to me?
I am. What is you calling from?
Okay. I'm sorry.
What is your name? Where are you calling from?
My name's Shelley, and I'm from San Diego, native.
What do you want to talk about today? What do you got for us?
Well, I don't know if it's a subject that you want to talk about. It's tennis.
What do you got on tennis?
It's tennis. Well, I guess I was, I'm a native. My son is, I can hear me now. This is kind of embarrassing. Okay, so I'm a local player, have high family background in tennis and as a pro. And my son is attending a college locally. And my coach is now passed away, which I just found out. And another really influential guy has passed away in an accident. And another person is also passed away. And the coach is not having tryouts for the team. And my son is a really good player. He's worked his butt off. He's not spoiled. And it's awful. So I just wondered what your thoughts are. I called the women's coach, and he said he would talk to the men's coach, but he can't practice with the team as yet, and the coach hasn't even looked at my son at all. He's played a couple of players on the team and done well with them. So I'm just wondering what to do as a very
Well, to try to put it in this perspective here. So, if he's at a local college, obviously with colleges, it's a little bit different. It's not like a high school you can just walk on or do a tryout. There's a lot of different things that you have to go with that. So, best is for your son to do it himself and reach out to the coach about playing particularly. That's a lot better. See what it takes to walk on at said local college, especially if you already reached out to the women's coach. But that is how I would go about that. So thank you for the phone call. Really appreciate it. Tryouts should be legally mandated. At the college level, I don't know. In the comments we got here, Dear Braden segment has been bored. Put the fries in the bag. Let's get out to Jane in Claremont. Jane, what's going on?
Hi, Braden. I'm calling about the Padres. So I feel like as a Padres fan, it was a great season until I think it was Dodger Stadium, and I just want to know what you think about this. But I feel like once we let ourselves respond to Dodgers fans, I think things kind of took a turn there. And I just felt like, for example, I understand that Fernando was responding to fans and saying stuff to him, but I think we kind of lost our focus. And if you remember Mookie Betts, he went into the cage, and I think he had 200 or 300 at bats, and then after that hit 4 home runs, one of which did not count. And I just think that the Padres needed to, when they were, going 0 for 20 innings or whatever it was, needed to switch it up a little bit. And I think, I love Manny. He's a great leader. I've known him since he was a Baltimore Oriole, and I saw the stuff he did. And I think maybe this year might be karma for him a little bit for some of the stuff he did in the past. I think he stepped up as a leader, but I also think he let Dave Roberts, for example, get in his head. So what's your thoughts on that?
I honestly, I mean, I think Padres fans are upset about the way that series ended because of the antics that were involved, and then all of a sudden the Padres were unable to swing the bat, and then looking at that as kind of not an excuse, but I think looking at that a little bit too closely. I don't think that was that big of a deal for these guys. So I understand what you're saying. I mean, there's a lot of distractions. You try to eliminate that. I think in as much as, we like to complain about what Dave Roberts did and everything like that. If that affects you, that's what you gotta focus on yourself. You should be able to overcome those things as a professional athlete. I don't necessarily think that was the case. I don't necessarily think the Padres lost that series because of the antics and the fans and everything like that. I just think that the Dodgers for 24 straight innings were lights out. I mean, that happens. I mean, your bullpen does really well. They ended up winning the World Series. So I don't necessarily think it was like that. I mean, I don't think it was karma for what Manny did in the past. I think he's done a great job. And Jane, I appreciate the phone call. I understand where you're coming from though too as a Padres fan. You try to find things that it had to be this, it had to be that because things didn't work out the way we wanted it to work out. So I get that. But at the same time, there's a lot of other aspects that are a part of this as well. Like the Padres just flat out did not play very good. I mean, in those last couple of games. I thought the Padres, I didn't think it was the antics for the Dodgers. I don't think he was talking to the fans. I thought the Padres lost that edge when they gave up the grand slam to Teoscar Hernandez. I thought that was the turning point of the series. I thought from that point over, the Padres had lost. I thought the series was over. Because of the momentum swing that it was, I think it was at that point, the Padres had him 6-0. And if you finish that game 6-0, the Dodgers are going into the next game. Because the Padres still won that game. The Padres are going into the next game facing elimination after they just got their ass handed to them for 2 straight days, going like, forget this, it's over. But what happened instead was they hit the grand slam. They ended up losing by 1. They had a rough inning that really gave the Padres the 6 runs that they needed to win. And they sat there and went like, look, we're right there. I mean, we could be up 2-1 right now in the series if we didn't throw the ball all over the infield. In that 1 inning, the Padres scored 6 runs. And now the Padres are pitching a guy that we tagged the first night in Dylan Cease on 3 days rest. I think that immediately flipped the script for them, the Teoscar Hernandez grand slam in the divisional series. I think that was the turning point of their postseason, because if that doesn't happen, I think they roll over and you're watching Padres-Dodgers 2022 NLDS all over again. But giving up that grand slam and giving them life gave them this catapult to a World Series. I see it in football all the time. I mean, you got to finish teams when they are down. You cannot leave them in series. You cannot leave them in games. And even though the Padres still won that game, Game 3, that's how I felt about that, and that's why I think that's where I think everything started to go in a direction for Los Angeles. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Let's get to Clay in the South Bay. Clay's always got a good phone call. What's going on, Clay?
Hey, Braden. Hey, finally get to talk to you again since the beginning of the football season, and my Browns got it handed to them more than once. All I can say is hopefully they'll turn it around and start winning something.
Hey,
The
looked
other
good last
thing is
week with
Oregon.
Jameis Winston.
Yeah, and that's exactly my point. I mean, again, I don't know what the Deshaun Watson deal was. All I know is if I had that kind of money, I don't think I'd be throwing it his way. But hey, hindsight's 20/20 in Cleveland, like every day. So, I mean, what can you say about that? But
Right.
what about Oregon, though? I mean, Oregon they're playing lights out. I mean, they're a for sure football team right now. I think they're unstoppable. They beat Ohio State, but they didn't just beat Ohio State. I mean, they beat just about everybody they played. I mean, and they're standing up. I mean, they're looking pretty strong.
They
Yeah,
are
I'm
the
pretty
only
jazzed.
the only teams that really gave Oregon a run for their money were the two teams from the state of Idaho. Boise State and Idaho went over there and gave them a run for their money. But I mean, they look the best right now in college football. I think we'll see what happens in the later kind of workings of the Big Ten, but I'm looking forward to this 12-team playoff. I think it really is anybody's game, and the fact that Idaho went toe to toe with them in Autzen Stadium and Boise State did the same thing, I think they got their moment too, where any team can get them. And here's the best thing, Clay, about the 12-team playoff, especially in football. Football is a war of attrition. Guys are going to go down, and when you play, and you're going to have to play a couple of playoff games in a row, these teams are going to get. It's really going to test their depth going against. And when you play really good football teams, when you're a good football team and play another good football team, guys go down. I mean, that's just the level of play that happens. In a physical sport, those are usual physical games, and guys are going to go down throughout this 12-team playoff. And honestly, the teams that can survive the longest are going to be the ones that win this thing. I think you're going to get a school that might go on a run here in this 12-team playoff that you're least expecting. It should be a fun college football playoff.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I mean, and just talking about attrition. I mean, even look at. Of course, I watched the Ohio State games. I mean, but I mean, looking at the Ohio State game even yesterday, and knowing that last year, their center is now left guard or and rather than center. I mean, it just shows you that through attrition and injuries. You have to put Band-Aids where Band-Aids are needed and move people around to get your best performance. But talking about best performance, I totally agree with you on the Padres. I really do think that Game 3, the momentum shifted, and we never had a reason to bring it back. And I don't fault anybody. I just think they went flat. There's nothing more than you can say. Good pitching beats good hitting, and good hitting beats good pitching. And it just so happened that the pitchers they threw at us, they were better than the guys with the bat.
Yeah, that happens. And the thing is that happens all the time in the regular season. It's just not on that big scale, right, where you're not paying attention to it as much. But, Clay, I appreciate the phone call, and hope I'm a big Browns fan today, especially when they're playing the Chargers up there, just north of us. So hopefully the Browns can take care of business. Let's go with see what Jameis Winston can do in the ball game today.
Well, I'm hoping back-to-back wins, of course. But I must say, though, I didn't shed a tear last week when they beat the Ravens because, I don't like the Blackbirds either.
I love it, Clay. Appreciate it. Don't be a stranger. We'll talk to you next time. Love talking to Clay. Love the phone calls. People are like, hey, way to be patient. I mean, hey, people want to get their sports talk in. It's great. Some of these are pretty funny. Some of them are pretty funny. Some of them are great. It's a good time. We're talking sports. What more can you want? Speaking of talking sports, get your fantasy lineup set. We'll let you know who's active and inactive with the NFL games when we come back. Plus, a Week 9 preview of the NFL. We might dive into some college football. I know we're getting that pushed back a little bit, but if you want to give us a shout, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. Braden Surprenant Show live and locally each every Sunday morning from 8 to 10, San Diego's number one sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Braden Surprenant Show live and local each every Sunday morning. Getting ready for NFL football now. Talked a lot of Padres in the first hour and a half. Wanted to get to Aztec football and some college football, but might have to do that in the next segment. Do want to get you updated on who's in and who's out. We got the inactive list for the NFL games today. Get your fantasy football lineup set. I just set mine. I always have to remember to do that on Sundays when I'm doing a show. It's very difficult to do. But let's talk about the 10 a.m. games. Guys that are in, guys that are out, active, inactive, as we will have that list for you right now. Baltimore, the Ravens today are taking on, who are the Dirty Birds playing? Ravens are playing the Denver Broncos. Keaton Mitchell, running back for Baltimore, is out. He'll have to wait yet another week before getting a chance to spell Derrick Henry. Keaton Mitchell is out. I don't know why you would have him on your fantasy team, but I digress. Buffalo, Amari Cooper, wrist injury, inactive today. Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir should get the majority of wide receiver targets in Buffalo. It's the Bills' Amari Cooper that is inactive today for Buffalo. Receiver Curtis Samuel for Buffalo. He is active. He may get a few looks, especially with Cooper out, but don't expect too much for the Bills wideout. Amari Cooper, inactive. Curtis Samuel is active. Jonathan Brooks, running back, Carolina, knee injury. He's inactive next week. Would be the last chance the Panthers have to activate the rookie if he sits this one out. Chuba Hubbard is expected to start yet again for Carolina. Tommy Tremble, the tight end for the Carolina Panthers. He's got a back injury. He is also inactive. He was looking to play, but will apparently sit. Jatavion Sanders should get the tight end targets today for Carolina. They got a couple of receiving news for you. Adam Thielen, receiver for Carolina, out with a hamstring injury. Why risk re-injuring him? Deontay Johnson is gone. Adam Thielen might also be heading elsewhere with the trade deadline looming. He is out. Gives you an opportunity, and I just did this myself, need a receiver, to pick up a receiver today for the Carolina Panthers that might get a lot more work in than initially anticipated. I mean, Leggett for sure is going to be able to play, but also, and man, I literally just picked him up. I just had to look up his name real quick, and now it's not loading. But I picked up Coker today, so expect that to be a move for you as well if you're looking for receiving help. He's going to get a lot more work now with the other players being out. So I picked up Jalen Coker of the Carolina Panthers. Should be pressed into action. Thielen is out. Deontay Johnson, now a member of the Ravens. That is a look at Carolina's receiving impacts. Xavier Leggett will play for Carolina. Should be able to suit up and start opposite of Jalen Coker at the wide receiver position. Running back Zach Moss of Cincinnati has a neck injury. He is out. Knew this late Friday. Add to the injury report, spelled trouble. We will see a lot of Chase Brown in Cincinnati. T. Higgins is inactive with a quad injury. So get a lot more work out of Andre Osivas. Will start likely alongside Jamar Chase. Charlie Jones, receiver for Cincinnati, is inactive with a groin injury. Might put Trent Irwin on the deep league flex radar for all of you guys in a deep league. Dante Foreman, running back for Cleveland, team decision inactive. He's apparently not needed with both Nick Chubb and Jerome Ford back in action today. Ezekiel Elliott did not make the trip with the Cowboys to Atlanta. Team decision out. Cowboys are getting Rico Dwaddle back and have elevated Dalvin Cook to take place of Elliott, who did not travel with the team. So Zeke is out for Dallas. For the Chargers, Stone Smart, tight end, ankle injury, inactive. Only talking about him so that we can report that fellow tight ends Hayden Hurst and Will Dissly are not on this week's injury report. So Hayden Hurst and Will Dissly are active. Stone Smart is inactive. DJ Chark of the Chargers, also an active wide receiver with a groin injury. He was activated from IR, but will apparently need more time. Quentin Johnston, who was removed from the injury report on Friday, will play for the Chargers. Vegas, Zamir White, quad injury, is active. While he seems ready to play, Alexander Madison is still expected to be the lead back for Vegas. Zamir White is active, though, for the Raiders. Drake May, concussion, is active. He has cleared the league's concussion policy and will start Sunday for the New England Patriots. Wide receivers KJ Osborne and Tyquan Thornton are both out for New England. Kendre Miller, running back for the Saints, has a hamstring injury. He is out and on the IR. Alvin Kamara is pretty much the only healthy running back on the Saints roster. Other running back Jamal Williams, inactive with a groin injury. Fullback Adam Prentice might get some touches alongside practice squad elevated Jordan Mims. As, again, we mentioned, Alvin Kamara, really the only active running back today for New Orleans. Bub Means, New Orleans wide receiver, is inactive with an ankle injury. Turning quarterback Derek Carr may have to throw some to Marquez Valdez-Scantling instead. Also receiving core for New Orleans, Cedric Wilson Jr. is active with a hip injury. Even so, don't be surprised to see Mason Tipton starting alongside Chris Olave for the Saints. In New York, Greg Joseph, the kicker for the Giants, out with an abdomen injury. So Jude McIntyre is now in the National Football League. He is kicking for the Giants today. Will Levis, quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, inactive with a shoulder injury. Mason Rudolph will start again as Levis is not at 100%. Tajay Spears is out with a hamstring injury. This is where we would normally say that Julius Chestnut will be the team's number 2 running back, but Tony Pollard, active with a foot injury. Chestnut might get a few extra touches if Pollard, who did not practice all week, can't play a full game. So Pollard is active, but he didn't practice all week. So maybe Julius Chestnut will get some touches for Tennessee. Other injuries for the Titans, Tyler Boyd, wide receiver, is active. He'll give it a go. So will Calvin Ridley, who has a shoulder injury, who was removed from the injury report on Friday. Last injury to report for you, Brian Robinson Jr., running back for Washington, inactive with a hamstring. He was limited all week in practice. Austin Eckler gets a big boost in fantasy value today. If you're on the fence with Austin Eckler and another running back, definitely start Austin Eckler. Afternoon games, Jordan Love, questionable with a groin injury. Josh Jacobs is questionable with an ankle injury. Did miss practice early in the week, but appears to be in line to play. So I would start Josh Jacobs if you have that option in Green Bay. Jacksonville injuries. Tank Bigsby, questionable with an ankle injury. Likely to get a lot of touches if he can go, and Etienne cannot. Speaking of which, Travis Etienne, hamstring injury is questionable. Risky Week 9 start in fantasy as a late window game time call. So if you had to pick between the two, if you had both running backs, I'd go with Bigsby over Etienne. Other Jacksonville injuries. Gabe Davis, even after participating in practice all week, he's still going to be a game-time decision for Jacksonville. Christian Kirk, wide receiver, with a collarbone injury, is out. He was limited all week long. It's also going to come down to a last minute until we know about Thomas. They have him listed currently as out. Brian Thomas Jr. is questionable. Parker Washington and Tim Jones could be the only receiver options for Trevor Lawrence this week. If we're thinking about starting Trevor Lawrence, might want to think about picking up somebody else. Jordan Whittingham, receiver for the Rams, questionable, the shoulder injury. He's only going to have fantasy value if one of the Rams receiving starters return to the sidelines due to injury. Puka Nacua is questionable with a knee injury. And the fact Nacua is back in the injury report is scary. However, he did travel with the team and appears to be in line to play. Dallas Goddard for Philadelphia is out with a hamstring. Greg Calcaterra will start, but he has no Dallas Goddard. Noah Fant of Seattle, tight end, is out with a groin injury. Trip to the IR not currently planned, but still might be Week 12 before we see Fant again. DK Metcalf is out with a knee injury. Only looking like Metcalf may be on track to return to the field following next week's bye. Sunday night game, the only update we have for you, TJ Hawkinson of Minnesota has been activated from the injured reserve. Hawkinson will make his 2024 debut, but he may still need a week or two to get back to full speed. That's a look at your injury report for the NFL. When we come back, we'll preview Week 9 of the National Football League on the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10. San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Welcome back to the Braden Surprenant Show, live and local each every Sunday morning. Talking Padres baseball, talking NFL football. We'll try to get into some college football as well. I didn't think this was kind of interesting. It just reported on NFL Network. Chicago Bears are playing the Arizona Cardinals today in Arizona. It's an afternoon game, a 1:05 start out here on the West Coast on CBS. Arizona's favored by 1.5 against the Bears, but Tyreek Stevenson, you remember him from last week? Tyreek Stevenson is one of the defensive backs for the Chicago Bears in the final play of the game against Washington. Was talking smack to some fans in the stands while on the field. As the ball was snapped, 2 seconds of the play had already started. He's still running his mouth and then ends up being the guy that knocks the ball into the air perfectly for a Hail Mary touchdown for the Washington Commanders. That Tyreek Stevenson, remember him? He is not in the starting lineup today. Not in the starting lineup today for the Chicago Bears. When you mess around, you find out. Some accountability in the professional ranks of the NFL. Not getting a lot of that at the college level right now. And I was talking about this. I kind of wanted to get into this. We'll talk about the college games, the NFL games in just a second. But it's interesting. I was watching, and I've been watching college football, and the thing with the college football is very interesting. Is if you've got a group in college football now, you have a situation in which the players have all the power and they run the league. And whether or not you agree with that or not, what it creates is this kind of sense of, let's say, arrogance, but more entitlement when it comes to games, and of the fact of you can't really hold players accountable in that particular aspect, because what are you going to do? And all of these players do the same thing, right? So unless they buy into what they're trying to achieve, and unless you find those guys that just really want to win, if you got a team of talented players that are making money, you can't tell them what not to do, because what they're going to do, they're like, what are you going to do about it? If you hold a player accountable, like, we're not going to play you. They're just going to be like, all right, well, I'm going to go enter free agency right now, and I'm just going to leave, and I'm going to get $400,000 to go play somewhere else. So you can't really, and I'm not in this realm of punishing, but there's no there's no incentives. Where you get punished for being a selfish player. And what Tyreek Stevenson did last week was selfish. And the Bears we're not going to deal with this. You could do that somewhere else. But in the National Football League, Stevenson can't take that and just be like, all right, see ya, I'm out. I'm going to enter the transfer portal. You don't see that in professional sports. Also, their contracts are guaranteed. I think you get a lot now in college athletics where you get guys that is sitting there, getting a check, playing games, understanding that it doesn't really matter. I'm making, a couple $100,000. You're a college kid, right? That's a lot of money to a college kid. I don't have to go to class. I don't have to do this. I don't have to listen to the coach. Who cares if we don't win? After a couple of games, they don't make it. They've made it such a, and finally they're expanding the playoff, but it's what's the incentive to win? Why do you care? I find myself a lot of times looking at games going the people in the stands want them to win more than the guys on the field want to win. And I think it goes back to this kind of generation of kid. And I've seen it the last couple of years at the high school level, and now these players at the college level. It's very rare you find players that play the game and they really want to win said game. There's other incentives for them to play the sports they're playing. At the high school level, a lot of it's I got to get to. It's a way for me to get to college. It's for me to play in college. which is true. But I think a lot of players nowadays in the high school realm like to be courted and given offers more than just playing at college. Like, I don't think a lot of these guys in this particular case really care who's offering them. I just think that they want to be wined and dined a lot. Do I want to be at one of the best schools, or like what's going on here with this recruiting process? I think we have made sports so corporate at the lower levels, and I'm talking even the youth levels with AAU and all the travel and all that stuff, where you want these kids to specialize in one sport, and you sell the kid and the family that they're going to go pro and make all this money, and in the meantime, adults are making a bunch of money off of them, and it creates this environment of everybody's kind of out for themselves, and they kind of play the sport for their own individual reasons, and then it's like, hey, it's cool if we won, but like we don't really want to win. Like it's not like the main goal, right? It's kind of like the mentality of like playing adult league sports, right? Like I play men's softball because it's fun. I like to win. I would like to win, but at the end of the day, I play so many games. I'm on so many teams, and it's like it doesn't really matter. That like, yes, I want to win, but it's not like I'm doing everything I need to do to win. Because it doesn't really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I'm not getting paid to do it. It's not my profession. I mean, a little bit of pride is nice. I mean, I don't want to get my ass kicked, but that's kind of the incentive I think a lot of people have on these sports. But I don't think they play it because they think it's fun. I think they play it because of other aspects. I think the social media aspect's a big thing. And we've heard Deion Sanders talk about that in past, about this like social media clout. I can't tell you how many guys on teams that I see, teams I coach against, that have their own personal photographer on the sideline. And all they do, they get paid to just film one kid. It's amazing to me in this day and age. It's amazing to me that that's the thing. I'm like, do you want to win? Or is it like, are we just talking about what we look like on social media? Like, how bad do these athletes want to win at any level? Like, is that what, I just think it's different now. I think you need to have that perspective as a fan too, when we get super emotional about these games and you're just going like, guys, it's really not that big of a deal to a lot of players on the field. I think, and I agree, and my dad said this about 5, 6, 7 years ago. A lot of players will take the win. They don't necessarily want to win. And I think if you asked a lot of players, if you asked them about, would you rather have X amount of dollars or would you rather win a national championship? Would you rather have X amount of dollars or would you rather win the Super Bowl? Would you rather have X amount of dollars or would you rather win a World Series? I think everybody would say X amount of dollars. I mean, think about it. Like Alabama, right? Like Alabama lost in the playoffs at the Rose Bowl, and Nick Saban was upset, didn't like the way his kids acted. He did the exit interviews, and everybody was just worried about how much money they were going to make. Like, nobody really cared if they won or not. I'm not saying that's right nor wrong, but what I'm saying is it's amazing to me how we have gotten to this standpoint with sports where it's just all mercenary football, like Boogie says in the chat. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, college football right now, and the product shows, it's a bunch of mercenaries being hired to try to win games, but at the end of the day, if they don't win, it's that they're still getting paid, right? You're getting paid to fight a war, but if you don't win the war, it's not the big. It's not. You're not fighting for the cause. You're fighting for the check. And so I see, like, you see in college, and the other thing too, especially with college athletics, with the transfer portal, and everybody's trying to get their money. And you know what? If you were a parent, I'm not a parent. I don't have any kids. All right, but at the same time, if you have your child playing a sport that they've played their entire life, and somebody's willing to pay them $400,000 to play said sport, you would be a fool to turn that down. Right? You'd be a fool to turn that down. to leave the school. I mean, with all these schools, with these kids that are playing like 4, 5, 6 years in college at like 3 to 4 different schools, what school do you associate yourself with? And when you move around that much, do you even have like this sense of pride for like the team that you play for or the school you represent or whatever? At least in the NFL, they're incentivized by money in a sense that they could get cut or like Tyreek Stevenson benched immediately and all of a sudden their livelihood is gone. It's different. They're professionals. They're feeding their families off this. That's a different topic. And those guys, that is the level of football in the NFL is great. The product on the field is jacked up because of penalties and officiating and the rules that they have put in place. In college, the product on the field is getting worse because it's almost like you have a bunch of pickup games every week, and it's like, let's see if our guys want to win more than the other guys do, and what happens when things don't go their way. And that happens a lot in high school. That's why you get all these blowouts in high school games. Because kids are like, all right, this kind of sucks. We're down 14-0. Like, all right, let's just get out of here. Or I can't wait for the season to be over. Like, I'm just kind of done playing. I think you mix in with the attention spans. I think you mix in with incentives to play. It's just a different level of, it's just different in sports now. It's just different. I think there's this like new sense of entitlement from the younger generations about like what they bring to the table with college athletics because people have been so invested in their particular school. I mean, you saw like Penn State yesterday they got booed after the game when they're singing the alma mater and kids left the field and half of them did. I mean, everybody, it's half in, half out. And the fans were just, merciless. But the thing is, it's like it's your paid mercenaries. They didn't play like you wanted them to. You want to win in the stands more than they really want to win on the field. And it's a weird dynamic right now in college athletics. It's a weird dynamic. And don't get this confused with me saying they don't like winning. They like winning. They will take the win. If it happens to be a win, they'll take it. They'll be excited. They'll be happy about it. But I don't think necessarily know in this day and age of college and high school athletics that everybody is just in there to win. I think everybody's got their own incentive for why they play said sport, own incentive of why they're out there doing the game, playing the game, and what they're trying to do next. I mean, I think if you ask most college kids, it's like, I'm trying to, if you're at the bottom end of like the group of 5 kids, it's like, I'm trying to start. Because if I start, then I can go to the Power 5 school because I can make, and then it ends up being like I can make money. It all reverts around to the money aspect. And for a long time that everybody was invested in the logos of these schools, and that's in the connection that they had by attending said school or growing up in said in said city that had that as the team, and that's like kind of the central community of college athletics, and that got so popular and big that people just assume that, well, these kids are putting on all this work and effort, not getting paid anything. We got to pay them. I think that's fine. I think the NIL situation with name, image, and likeness of making money off your own name, image, and likeness being outlawed was kind of ridiculous. But this pay-for-play and mercenary sports that we have right now is just not leading to a great product. I mean, look at the Yankees in the last game of the World Series. They lost the lead, and they're like, yeah, forget it. We're done. Let's just move on. There's no fight and grit out of a lot of these teams now, aside from the ones that are really bought in, or like Pitt, who got smoked yesterday. So I can't even use that. That started going with like incentivized contracts. 3-year contracts are coming to college athletics. 3 years minimum guaranteed contracts are coming to college athletics. I've heard that on the rumor mill. And I'm going to tell you right now, that might fix some of the problems. But the level of play what we've made sports to be when it comes to entertainment and the corporate level of it with everybody making money, it's made for as Boogie said in the chat, a mercenary form of sports. Hopefully that changes. I'm Braden Surprenant. Thanks again for joining us on the Braden Surprenant Show. We'll be back tomorrow with Andy Nelson, followed by America's Finest Football Show at 10 p.m. Join us. Sending us on Sports Station 97.3 The Fan.